It's a drum dryer so that you get more surface area. The old school dryers were just a flat belt, but then you just had the length of the dryer, you know, there wasn't as much surface area. So these are drum drive. That wool is actually going up and over 6 big drums inside there just to make more use of the, you know, of a shorter dryer.
All right, so this is wool coming out of the dryer. What do we do now before it needs to be rebaled?
You know, we have pickers that sit here, and on this type of wool that we're running right now, there's not a lot to take out, but, you know, specific wool types will need, you know, we have to watch for black fiber or paint or whatever it may be. So we have pickers here that are taking out anything that doesn't need to be in it before it goes on. And from here it goes through 2 different dusters and through the baler. So
wool came in bales and goes out in bales. So Is this the last stage for you?
This is the last stage. As it comes down, we'll bale it. Those bales will average 630 to 650. Every bale that comes out, we core it and do our own moisture and grease test on it. And then it's put on the scale, weighed, written down. There's a cover put over it, and then it's moved to the warehouse and waits for a truck to
come. Starting in the picking house, we begin to separate the bales and weigh out the amount of fiber needed for a project. A special scale allows us to blend grades of wool or different colors. For example, a blend of natural white wool and stock-dyed black wool creates a heathered gray wool. The process of the picking house also gives buoyance back to the compressed fiber, preparing it for carding. Carding is the process of combining raw wool through a series of barrels wrapped with wire bristles. The last barrel's fine bristles are shaved to create a sheet of wool. That sheet is then split into ribbons that will be fed through 2 rollers, applying pressure and motion. The ribbons are rolled into loose strands called roving, the first stage of yarn. The rolls of roving are transferred then to a spinning frame. Spinning wool helps bind the individual strands of fiber together, creating a strong, fine thread called yarn. This finished yarn will go through one more step before it's woven into fabric. The last step of yarn production is coning, where the yarn is transferred to cones to begin the weaving process. Woven yardage has 2 levels of yarn arranged perpendicularly, the warp and the weft. The warp is a series of threads, one next to another, and on average 2,500 yarns across. It acts as the foundation of the fabric in which the second yarn, the weft, is woven. The colors used in the warp can also help alter the design. By using a multicolored warp, we create unique stripes and plaids. When a warp beam is complete, it's transferred to a loom for weaving. Each warp yarn is threaded through the heddle or needles of the harness. The harness will raise and lower warp threads, creating a gap for the weft to be inserted through. On a new project, this is done manually and can take as long as 2 business days before the equipment is ready to operate. On the looms, the warp and weft are precisely intertwined into the woven yardage. Next, the woven yardage goes to the burler, where the fabric is taken off the beam and run through a massive backlight, where inspectors look for imperfections or irregularities, repairing them with scissors and tweezers. Finished product that will have a tassel or fringe are woven with a gap in the fabric, where a few inches of warp yarn is left exposed in the weave. The fringer gathers sections of the yarn in that gap, twists it together, and inserts a thread to hold its shape. When the yardage is washed in the next step of the process, the raw threads will bind together to complete the fringe. Fulling is the next step and is a process of intentionally shrinking the material. Using hot water to pull air from the core of the fiber and agitation to encourage the wool to bind in on itself, we're able to create a denser, fuller fabric. We then wash the yardage using detergents to soften the wool itself. Treatments for moth resistance and machine washability can also be added during fulling. Solid colored blankets and throws are woven in natural white and piece dyed. This allows us to adjust to demands for individual colors. After drying the fabric, either after its fulling process or piece dyeing, comes napping. Similar to the carding department, the napper uses barrels wrapped in wire bristles. This helps soften the fabric, giving a loft to the fiber. It also helps increase the finished blanket's ability to insulate by creating small air pockets. Our final step to finished product are cutting and sewing. On third floor, the material is cut to individual sized units. Edges are finished with a serge, whip stitch, or tailored hem, and labels and hang tags are added. This is also the department that will give a final quality check. After 22 steps and as much as 10 days, a Faribault blanket, throw, scarf, or accessory is finally ready.